What's going on, guys? Welcome to the Fantasy Addiction Network. Today we are going to be breaking down the top 8 power rankings for the XFL after week 1, going into week 2, giving you guys the heads up on who we think now is leading the way in terms of the most talented rosters. But if you guys are looking for XFL fantasy and XFL news content posted daily, click that like and subscribe button. We'll be posting stuff throughout the XFL season, so make sure you're subscribed to that. And not going to waste any more time, let's get started right away. Alright guys, so as I said, we're going to be going through the power rankings in the XFL now. This is just something to monitor that, we'll want to know who the better teams are, at least for fantasy purposes, because typically the better teams, when you're playing more competitive games towards the end of the season, just players will see their values rise and fall based on the value of the team around them. So definitely something to keep in mind, but it's also just fun to do power rankings. So let's see, we'll compare them to where we had them before the season started and go from there. So at number 8 right now, we have the Tampa Bay Vipers. Now last week we had them ranked at number 7, so they dropped one spot in our rankings this week. Aaron Murray looked really bad. I'm thinking they're going to need to switch to Taylor Cornelius or Quentin Flowers pretty soon here if they want to save their season, but I'll give him one more chance because the New York Guardians do have a very good defense, and their offense was getting into the red zone. I believe they had 4 trips to the red zone and only came away with 3 points, so the Guardians were just a very good bend and don't break defense there in the red zone, so I think that they can definitely put it together and start getting some more offensive scoring going, but their defense also had a lot to be desired there. They had a player that punched another player in New York and got ejected from the game, so lack of composure and discipline also definitely seems to be a problem. And then just watching like the halftime interview or I want to call it like the pump-up speech that coaches typically do at halftime to try to get their players re-energized. And Mark Trestman just had no energy, just didn't seem to really motivate his team to do anything, and it showed in the way that the players played. So while I like Trestman as an offensive mind, I don't know that he has what it takes to truly motivate his team. So we'll see if the Vipers can turn it around this week going up to Seattle to play the Dragons. All right, speaking of the Dragons, let's go to team number 7, Seattle. I had them ranked at number 4 last week, so this is one of my biggest fallers. They dropped down 3 spots. Now, Brandon Silvers looked pretty good against the DC Defenders, even though he had, a couple of key mistakes. The DC Defenders definitely have a really good defense, but he rolled his ankle at the end of week 1. We don't know his status as of yet, but if they lose Brandon Silvers and have to move to BJ Daniels, that might end up making their team a little bit worse. They had a pretty good run defense, but they couldn't stop the passing game. Eli Rogers, Rashad Ross, Kari Lee were just getting open all over the place, and that's definitely not a good sign, especially considering how pass heavy this league is and playing in the Western Conference with Houston. It's not going to be good for the Dragons. If Silvers can recover quickly, I'd like them to be able to rise a little bit, but this week will be very pivotal playing the Vipers. This will be a very important week for the Dragons to be able to turn things around and get a win. All right. Jumping up to number 6, we have the LA Wildcats. Now, last week I had them ranked at the bottom at number 8, so they jumped up 2 spots even though they lost. They played one half well on offense with their backup quarterback, and we're still hoping that Josh Johnson ends up returning soon, although we're starting to hear reports now that he might miss another week. And if Chad Knoff did in fact separate his shoulder, they're going to have to go with Jalen McClendon this week. That could be very bad for them, especially since they're going to play a Dallas Renegades team with Landry Jones, so they might end up staying in that winless category. And overall, I know a lot of people were touting their defense. I never really was too impressed by it. Their defense was pretty bad. They did get some pressure on Walker, so that's definitely something to note, but they, other than double teaming Sammy Coates all day, they just left wide receivers wide open for Philip Walker to just destroy them. So we'll see if they can pick it back up. Their defense was so bad that they've actually fired their defensive coordinator on Monday and will be moving on from him. So that kind of speaks to some bad locker chemistry there. But overall, I think that their offense can keep things going, especially once Josh Johnson comes back. All right, jumping to number 5. Don't hate me for this, but St. Louis BattleHawks I have here at number 5. Last week they were number 6, so they jumped up 1 spot. They did beat the Renegades last week, and they looked solid on all sides of the ball. Jordan Ta'amu is a legit force in this league and could end up being a top 2 quarterback, possibly even the number 1, just based on how the rest of the season goes. And they actually had a decent run game, which is something that most teams in the XFL couldn't seem to figure out or didn't even try. So that's definitely going to bode well for them going forward. However, they did just barely beat a team with a backup quarterback. Now, I know the Dallas Renegades had one of the strongest rosters overall, but playing Philip Nelson is completely different than beating the Dallas Renegades with Landry Jones. Plus, we haven't really seen how well these offenses are going to do once they get a few weeks to get adjusted to the flow of the game. They only had, scrimmage and preseason before this, which wasn't really the same thing as playing a full entire game. So it's going to take a few weeks for a lot of these offenses to truly click, and that's why, even though they beat the Dallas Renegades, I still have the Dallas Renegades ranked above them at number 4, and this is still a pretty significant drop because last week I had them ranked at number 1. So, losing week 1 to the BattleHawks definitely showed some signs of weakness in their team. Their defense wasn't quite as strong as we were hoping it would be, although maybe that's just the BattleHawks offense being a lot better than we expected it to be. But with Landry Jones coming back, we have to remember that there's a reason that Vegas and a lot of teams had, or a lot of analysts had the Renegades ranked as the number 1 team. Let's be patient with them. Let's see how they rebound here once they get Landry Jones back and can actually run this air raid offense in the way that they were planning on doing throughout the entire preseason. All right, jumping over to team number 3, we have the New York Guardians. Now, we had them ranked at number 3 last week, so they didn't see any dip or increase to their rank. Their defense is basically what we thought it would be, which is absolutely great. They did allow some yards to Aaron Murray and Devian Smith, but they held it down in the red zone, allowed 4 trips for the Vipers to the red zone, and only gave up 3 points. Had a score on defense, multiple turnovers, just a really good performance from the New York Guardians. And in terms of the offense, Matt McGloin looked all right. He definitely missed on quite a few of his deep throws, which was kind of my concern for him before the season started because he's never really been known as that deep ball quarterback. So if he can continue to improve his accuracy as the season goes on, this team could continue to see a rise in their rank. But for now, we'll have them at number 3, and we'll see how they fare against the Defenders this week. Jumping up all the way to number 2 is the Houston Roughnecks. Last week I had them at number 5, so they saw a huge jump here. Their offense was insanely efficient, even with no real run game to speak of. Philip Walker already looks to be the heads-on favorite for the MVP of this inaugural XFL season. And their defense is a bit rough. They have an okay defensive line, and they made some good plays in the secondary, but overall they weren't able to really slow down the Wildcats, even with a backup quarterback for the first half of the game. And I think that speaks more to the Roughnecks defense being a little bit less than stellar rather than the Wildcats just being really good. And their offensive line definitely is a bit concerning. Walker was getting hit a lot in this game, and if they want to continue to compete, they're going to need to make sure that Philip Walker is healthy. So that could definitely be a problem going forward, but it's really hard to ignore the highest scoring team on the week in a league that prioritizes offense. So that's why we have them at number 2. And then at number 1, we have the DC Defenders. Last week we had them ranked number 2, so they jumped up 1 spot here. But these top 3 teams are all pretty close in my mind. They have the deepest wide receiver core in the league. Once DeAndre Tompkins comes back, it just gets even better. They do need to get the run game going, but Seattle does have a good run defense, and I think Jarrell Presley will end up being one of the more efficient and better running backs in the league, and that just helps even further because of how strong their wide receiver core already is. Cardale Jones looked really sharp, didn't make too many mistakes, and was able to hit people deep. So that's going to continue to be a deadly strike. And then their defense, although not the best on the week, they had a very strong ability to pressure Brandon Silvers. They forced quite a few turnovers, and overall it just looked really good. So this is probably the most well-rounded team right now. If they can stay healthy, they have no reason to not continue to stay on top of the league at number 1. But anyway, hit me up in the comment section below and let me know what you guys think your power rankings are. Let me know where you agree or disagree, and we'll continue to monitor this as we go into the season. If you guys are looking for fantasy advice, you can check out my website at fantasyaddictionnetwork.com, and you can get weekly rankings, trade advice, waiver wire reports, everything that you need to be able to manage your fantasy team all the way through the season. We'll be keeping that updated. So check that out for free, and make sure you hit that like and subscribe button for more XFL fantasy and news content every single day throughout the season. And we thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.